Here we go.
Take me under. I don't know.
All right, welcome. This is Winston Bailey, your host of the Going Up podcast, brought to you by The Item. The Item stands for the Inclusive Technology and Entrepreneurship Movement. The Item offers flexible, low-cost training and resources to new techies, career professionals, and entrepreneurs, providing them with highly marketable and practical technology skills. The Item created a pipeline for career pathways in the emerging technology sector. The Item's main mission is to ensure everyone can participate in the emerging tech sector. With that said, again, this is your host, Winston Bailey, bringing to you the Going Up podcast, which focuses on the real issues concerning diversity and inclusion in tech and allows budding tech entrepreneurs to exercise their pitching skill sets among our thousands of listeners. Our topics focus on access to capital, mentorship, and the challenges of breaking in with your first tech product. So each interviewee gets a summary of the format of the show. They give a 60-second pitch, honing their pitching skills. And then following that, we take a deeper dive on exactly what are some of the problems and pain points that they're solving. Followed by that, we have three key questions. Then we have three takeaways, and that will conclude our show. Today, we have with us Mr. Andrew Fields, owner and operator of Fields Systems Integration, the creator of the app Moolah. Moolah is similar to the Zelle gifting platform for consumer purchases. It's really revolutionizing and basically disrupting the merchant to consumer transaction, causing for shorter lines, less hassle, and a safer purchasing exchange. So we have with us Andrew. Andrew's going to give us a 60-second pitch, but prior to that, we're going to give him a few seconds to prepare. Bear with us. Andrew, you are on.
Thank you. Winston, our Moolah project addresses the following 2 points of pain. One, we feel the existing credit card system is inherently insecure and that credit card identity theft will be responsible for suffering and waste until credit cards are replaced. Two, we feel that banks and credit card companies have been gouging merchants for too long by requiring merchants to pay transaction fees, fees which no longer provide value to consumers or merchants. So we've created Moolah as a technology solution to allow consumers to make purchases from merchants without the need to share any private personal information. Merchants receive their payment immediately with no transaction fees. As Moolah, which builds on open banking protocols, is used to finance more commerce, banks will benefit as well. To accomplish this, my company has introduced a new consumer purchase platform based on patent pending technology. The service provides new revenue options for financial companies willing to offer a cheaper, faster, and more secure purchase platform to their existing customers.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So, all right. Thanks, Andrew. We are going to come back.
Lifestyle cruising blue Bahama waters. No welfare supporters. More conscious of the way we raise our daughters. Days are shorter, nights are colder. Feeling like life is over. These snakes strike.
All right, we are back with Andrew Fields, the owner of Field System and the creator of the Moolah customer merchant exchange platform. Can we say that's exactly what it is, or could I word it differently for you, Andrew?
Winston, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, Andrew, I think you did really good on your 60-second pitch, but now is an opportunity for you can get down to some of the granularity with respect to the Moolah app. So again, your company's name is Phil System. The app is Moolah. Can you describe the pain for your particular customers, and who are your customers?
Sure. So my customers are all of us. Anyone who uses a credit card is a potential customer for the Moolah app. And the problem is that we've been using credit cards since 1970. We've definitely been worried about losing control of our personal identity, and credit cards just foster this mentality that we can buy things whenever we want, and we're willing to share whatever we want of our personal information, and that's bad. Consumers should be worried about identity theft. They need purchase options that allow them to shop securely, and Moolah's it. So consumers are part of my clients, as are merchants and the financial industry. So I can talk at more length about the merchants and credit and financial industry, but those are my clients as well, and everyone benefits with Moolah.
Okay, so what's the pain point? Why do they need it, or why would they want it? What are you alleviating?
Well, merchants work hard, but they lose 3 to 5% of their income revenue, right, because of credit card transaction fees. So their point of pain is that they're losing revenue, and there's no value that's provided by these transaction fees. Consumers, if you've met or interviewed people who've had their identity stolen, there is a cost to all the pain associated with reestablishing credit. Similarly, rewards program that taunt people and hook them to 2% reward bonuses, I think we can do better than that. So the Moolah rewards program, I call it Club Moolah, offers as much as 3% back, and it offers it immediately. So instead of trying to accumulate rewards points that you may or may not use, we give you 3% right back on the spot. So you get more money and you don't have to wait. Finally, the credit card industry is ripe for technical disruption. Over the last year, according to a Bloomberg study, they received $164 billion worth of revenues. 25% of that revenue came from credit card transaction fees. What I'm suggesting is that by using technology disruption through systems like Moolah, we can give back $25 billion to consumers and merchants, and that'll go a long way to building communities, while at the same time, we can still make a profit. So that's what we're doing with Moolah. We're allowing consumers and merchants to save more of their hard-earned money, and we as financial providers can do it within the infrastructure and just by keeping a little bit of the revenue for ourselves.
Financial providers meaning banks?
Banks and loan organizations. It turns out there's 5,000 credit card issuing firms in the United States, and all but, I should say it this way, 10 of those 5,000 are responsible for serving 85% of consumer debt. So the overwhelming majority of those loan banks and credit card companies are fighting for 15% of the revenue. With the Moolah system that we've got, we've lowered the barriers to entry so that those same organizations that exist today can get more fair compensated for the services that they offer. All that brings down prices for the rest of us as well.
So what's the magic? Do you have any competitors? What makes, if you do, what makes Moolah different?
So Moolah is different because it's the opposite of the way credit cards work. And in my opinion, the technology companies are reluctant. It's kind of like the emperor's law, the emperor's not wearing clothes. No one wants to acknowledge the flaws in the existing card processing networks. And the biggest flaw comes from the fact of the way the system works. The way the system works today, merchants give your credentials to your bank and then demand payment. So it's like a third person party is taking money from your bank account. And for whatever reason, we've become accustomed to accepting that that's a good thing to do. It's the cause of an awful lot of fraud, and that's why we have high costs in the industry. What Moolah does is turns that upside down. It uses technology so that the transactions initiated from the consumer, just like an online banking transaction where you have a bill, you pay it, the money goes, and you don't have to worry about people seeing your identity. Money just shows up at the merchant. The unique thing about the Moolah infrastructure is that it happens immediately, so the merchant can receive all of their money immediately, and it happens essentially for free. We've used technology that allows this financial transaction to happen at the speed of light and essentially for free, so that merchants can have the benefit of getting their money immediately with no delay or cost.
Okay. Well, that was a mouthful. I can't wait to take a deep dive on the industries that you're disrupting, and what are you going to do to sort of offset some of the challenges that's going to come your way. But we'll be right back. Once again, this is Winston of the Going Up podcast with our guest Andrew Fields, talking about his app Moolah. All right, welcome back. We took a short break. This is your host, Winston Bailey of the Going Up podcast with our guest, Andrew Fields, CEO and owner of Fields System, creator of the Moolah app, a customer merchant product that's going to disrupt the type of transactions customers are going to have with merchants. So during the break, Andrew and I were getting into a little bit of the weeds as far as the customer base, and it's apparent that there are three sets of customers that are going to be impacted by this. Four, if we look at it, there is the customers looking for quicker transactions, safer transactions. There's the merchants, which can offer better deals, can have secure transactions with their customers, and can save some of the money that they have to share with the credit card exchange businesses. There's the credit card exchange companies that creates the software and the hardware to allow customers to have that transaction. And then there's the banks who are sort of not getting the full benefit of whatever is occurring in that transaction when the customers withdraw funds from their bank account or credit card. So the question I have for you, Andrew, is if you can help me with you hone in on this. Let's try one customer base. And who's going to actually see the value? So we'll go from there. I'm going to stop. Your customer base, give me specifics like who exactly are they? The ones that once you launch the app, it's out there. Who's going to be the early adopters?
Okay, let me tell you about what we're doing today, Winston. Today in South Philadelphia on Passyunk Avenue, we have several restaurants who are actually actively working us with operational testing. So these restaurants are restaurants that are accepting Moolah for payment today, and when they receive payments, they get to keep 100% of the fee that was or the bill that was offered to their clients. They're seeing a 3 to 8% improvement in their revenue as a result of that. These are restaurants that tend to get a restaurant bill of about $200 a pop, so they're getting immediate return, extra additional return on their investment. This is great for restaurant owners, and just using them as one market segment. Typically, restaurants in Philadelphia have a return of less than 10% of the cost of preparing a meal. So by being able to keep 3 to 5%, we're allowing them to increase their revenue by as much as 25% of profits. So they're benefiting immediately.
Okay, so the restaurants are definitely seeing a quick turn on investment, and this is through your beta testing process.
This is through our operational testing. I don't like to use the term beta testing because we're talking about real money and real goods and services. We actually finished beta testing last year, and we're in our operational mode where we just don't want to simply release the software to the general public, because we want to make sure that people have a good, successful experience. So we're having a controlled release, and in our operational test, that allows us to monitor, work closely with the consumers and work closely with the restaurant owners to make sure that they understand the app and everything's working satisfactorily. Okay. We've been open for business since about the beginning of the year, and we've had no issues with transactions, and we've had 100% availability.
So let's drill down a little bit more. So you're using restaurants, and
We are.
throughout your market research, are there any other industries that you think that could benefit from it? And also have an answer to this question: what's your business model? Is this B2C, B to enterprise, B to business, B2B, and is it going to be licensed? Is there certain tiers to
Sure.
this product?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the size of the market. There was some research that was done by Bloomberg in 2016 that showed that the credit card industry revenues were as much as about $163 billion a year. If you look at the breakdown of that $163 billion a year, 25% of that, about $43 billion, was assessed as income that came as interchange or transaction processing fees. What that means is that 75% of the income that credit card companies receive come from avenues other than transaction costs. That means there's a lot of money in the system above and beyond the interchange fees. Now, when I presented that information from the Bloomberg report, one of the problems that small entrepreneurial companies like me we're faced with is we present a large number like $163 billion. And then we make the claim that, oh, if we could only capture 1% of that, we'd be phenomenal successful. And while that is true, it's unbelievably hard for us to get 1% of that $163 billion. What I mean to get out of this statistic that I shared is just to demonstrate the size of the market. The market is huge, $163 billion, and 3/4 of that money has nothing to do with credit card fees. So now we get into the nuts and bolts. What have we developed? What is our specific business model? We've developed a new financial service that's available by subscription to lending organizations wishing to provide new value to their clients. The complete business model produces value for consumers, merchants, and banks. And the three of them need to be satisfied in order for the business to be successful. Merchants are easy. They receive value when the retail sale of a product or service is made, since they no longer pay a transaction fee. Consumers receive value. We talked a little bit about consumer identity and some of the problems and costs associated with that. Club Moolah is a reward program that will compete favorably against the credit card, even the best credit card programs. Today, the best credit card programs are giving as much as 2% back. We're looking to start a rewards program once we establish commerce that gives as much as 3% back. And rather than waiting for people to accumulate points, we're going to give that back immediately. You'll get a cash discount on each transaction. We think that will be a value option for consumers that they'll appreciate. Finally, the banks, we talked a little about it before the previous break. Banks today, 85% of them are shut out of the market. I should say all but 10 are shut out of the market of really serving consumer debt. We have a platform that they can subscribe to, which will allow them to generate much more revenue, so allow them to participate in that market.
Okay, so Andrew, I'm a consumer, right? I'm a guy walking into the Gap, and the Gap has this Moolah app, but I don't have it. I'm doing regular credit card transactions. Why would I want this? Why would I feel comfortable with giving my bank information on this app? What is some of the security challenges that customers will have when downloading this? And what is the cost? Who incurs the cost of this? I have to pay for this app to download on my phone, and then I put my banking information on that. And what if the bank charges me now, so that your app can have access to my bank information?
Yeah, those are good questions, and the best way that I can describe it, first, there's no cost to the Moolah Market application. When you download it, you'll get that for free. The concern is, as a consumer, every time you use your credit card, you're putting yourself at risk. When you put your credit card into somebody else's reader, even though they're using one of those fancy chip readers, they're still making physical contact with your card. And if you understand the way the transaction works, there's really nothing to prevent a merchant from accumulating 3, 4, 5 transactions in the time you think they're only receiving one. Later down on the road, you may see that your credit card's been compromised and you have no idea which of the merchants was compromising your data. So there's a huge cost to credit card identity theft. Again, a different Berlinguer report itemized consumer credit card identity theft as being worth about $15 billion in 2018. So it's real money that's causing banks and merchants to be charged higher fees in order to distribute that cost among all the players in the industry.
Okay, so I got another question. What if the companies that do the credit card exchange, has the software, have the equipment, change the percentage that they place on a merchant? Then what? So the merchant is getting a little bit more of the revenue from the purchasing of a particular product and service, and the whole pain point that's being addressed is merchants aren't getting the full cost of whatever product or service that they're selling to the customer. And so and like you said, this is a disruptor. There could be a large company out there that says, hey, we don't want Moolah platforms with our merchants. Let's do some changes with our pricing structure. So then what?
Well, the problem is the industry that works with the credit card issuing firms is called PCI, the payment card industry. And that's a pipeline. So you've got company after company after company that each touches your personal information with each credit card transaction. And the reason or the way they get paid is through the transaction fees. So the problem is you've got an entire industry, the PCI payment card industry, that's self-funded today by transaction costs. What I'm saying is none of that cost adds any value to the consumer, so it should go to zero. And the PCI industry can't shift their costs to zero because they put themselves out of business. So that's a fundamental showstopper for the credit card industry. And it's why I have my hefty claim at the beginning of my project description, is there's a fundamental problem with credit cards, and it's like the emperor's wearing no clothes. The fact that the merchants charge a transaction fee is wrong, and we need to stop using credit cards.
Okay, that's fine. So there's two pain points. So the pain point for the merchant, that they have to share their profits. And then you talk about this pain point for the customer about a secure transaction. Are customers really complaining about security? Like if my bank is Wells Fargo or Capital One, and Capital One has a campaign to have safer, secure, identity-protected transactions, does that address my pain point of concern and say, hey, I don't necessarily want to download a Moolah app because Wells Fargo has increased their security measures? And the reason why I'm asking to go sort of a little bit deeper into that, you're saying, there's the merchant, there's the customer, and there's the bank, right? And nothing happens unless the customers are the adopters of this particular app. Because the customer doesn't want it, then the merchant doesn't see any benefit, and the banks with the credit cards, they don't see any benefit, right? So what I'm really looking at is trying to find out who benefits the most out of this transaction.
Well, it's probably difficult to say whether the consumer or the merchant benefits most. You did mention half of the value to the consumer, the half of the value being the secure transaction. And while so many of us are comfortable that we think the banks are looking after our credit card companies, when we interview people who have been victims of identity theft, they tell horrendous stories about the cost and the pain that they suffer. That's a real part of the value proposition for consumers. But let's not forget the second part, which is bigger and more relevant to a lot of us. I shop for credit cards today. My wife and I get 2% back, and we're very happy. We're in a point in our career where we spend a lot of money with credit cards, and we get a lot of benefit from the 2% back. The value that we're offering with Club Moolah is we're going to give them more. Instead of 2%, we're going to give as much as 3% back. And instead of waiting to accumulate points and then we cash in our points, that money comes back immediately. When you make a purchase, you'll get an immediate 3% discount if you're in the Club Moolah program. So there's huge incentive for all the people who are obsessed with spending with credit cards now to use the Moolah app whenever they can, because they'll get even more of a reward. So the consumers are going to be getting more of a reward with Moolah. The merchants are going to get to keep more of their revenue with Moolah. And banks, all but the 10, are going to be receiving an opportunity to get more money, more revenue by servicing consumer debt. So it really is a win for everybody, and it's a big win for everybody.
So let me ask you this question, just to sort of shift in customer base, and I told you I wanted to get a little bit more, drill down a little bit more about the customer base. Could it be, since it's a merchant transaction, a customer transaction, and a bank benefit, could it be that if you license the banks and say, add this as an option on your security platform? There is an app out there called Mint where it connects with your bank information. It gives you information when you make purchases and what's going on with your debt to income ratio. So you say, okay, then banks, I'm going to license this app, this platform for your customers to use, and then the customers see the benefit. And I'm saying if the customers see the benefit and they're using it, the banks see the benefit, then, and I asked a question earlier as far as what particular industry would probably be more receptive to using this. You can maybe retail as opposed to restaurants. Another point that I want to dig a little bit deeper into: many consumers are now doing a lot of online purchasing, and so how does this change the dynamics with online purchasing? And does the merchant fee component still matter if I'm doing an online purchasing with Amazon? So I asked a few points, and I hope if you can clarify.
Winston, those are big questions, but you're right on the money when you started talking about the Mint application. I'd like to just mention Zelle by comparison, because Zelle is a little bit more close. It's a little bit more similar to what I'm trying to do. If you have a bank account and your bank account participates in the Zelle network, you can use Zelle to send money to people of your choice, and that works today. What we're doing with Moolah is very compatible with Zelle, only instead of sending money to friends and family, we're allowing you to use your money in your bank account with merchant payments to merchants that you don't have a financial relationship with. So anywhere that you're buying with a credit card, if the merchant accepts Moolah, you can take money, you can do a payment with your Moolah application, similar to sending money with the Zelle application. It worked perfectly fine over the internet, and that creates new opportunities and new commerce, and it levels the playing field for internet people purchases as well. Today, I do an awful lot of buying over the internet. I buy a lot from Amazon. I buy a lot from big name shops because I trust them, because I have faith in them. But what that's doing is it's closing the door to all the small businesses that aren't Amazon or don't sell through Amazon. By using the Moolah application, I can buy from Larry's Jewelry Shop or other internet merchants without fear that it could be somebody who's just looking to acquire my financial information so they can commit fraud. Those people who have goods and services to sell can sell them on the internet. They can get paid, but the money comes through my bank. It's sent to them, and I don't have to worry about putting my finances at risk. So it opens the door, it levels the playing fields for internet purchases, and all in all, it's a game shifter.
So just help me out with this. So the main feature of the app is I go up to the register, a barcode comes up, I use my phone, it takes a picture of that, gives me the price, that money gets withdrawn from my account, that exchange is then given to the merchant. Online, there is no barcode that I'm just getting the cost. I put my credit card information in. And we're talking about, I think that there is more security concerns with online purchasing because whether it's your Wi-Fi connection or the device that you're using that's not protected, putting in my credit card information, and you're mentioning security, how does Moolah make this a secure transaction if I'm inputting my credit card information in? Or do I get an ID code for that represents my credit card information? If you can explain that.
Sure. So actually, don't ever, I would say don't ever put your credit card information to anyone on the internet. That's just a bad thing to do. What happens with Moolah is you would in fact see a barcode. You do your shopping just like you shop from your browser today. When you push the button that says show me what's in my shopping cart, in addition to seeing your shopping cart, you'll see a barcode on the screen. Once you see the barcode on your screen, you can use your cell phone to take a picture of that, and boom, you're in the payment processing portion of your cell phone app, and you can make the purchase to the payment. Technologies and websites are such, using active JavaScript and such, AJAX, that the merchant will be notified immediately if and when you decide to make the purchase. So your purchase experience is actually faster because you don't have to log into the merchant's website. You certainly don't have to type in your credit card information, so it's all in all faster. If you're doing your browsing on your cell phone, it's even easier because the cell phone app that you're doing your browsing with is going to receive the page when you say, look at my shopping cart, and it can then put up the link to bring up your Moolah app immediately, and you can continue the purchase without having to take a picture of the barcode. So it's fundamentally a lot more intuitive through the internet, and it's much safer because you never type your credit card information to anyone. It's just a bad idea.
Okay, so if my bank offers a secure secondary key password or identifying component to that transaction, would that necessarily discourage me as a consumer from using Moolah, right? And another piece is, these transactions sometimes are impulsive online. Sometimes there's not a lot of time. Are the consumers really interested in having another step to take further? I mean, to take a picture of the barcode. What if they got a horrible cell phone, or what if the camera isn't working, or what if there's an issue with connection? So I'm just curious, like, go ahead.
This is a question where a demonstration would provide a better experience than 1,000 words. But the transaction is more intuitive on the internet. When you're browsing with your desktop, putting up, clicking your shopping cart will give you a summary screen. Once you bring your camera application, you can finish the transaction much faster than if you have to log in or get out your credit card and type in your credit card information. It is much faster. If you're browsing with your phone, you don't have, it's even less cumbersome because you don't have to take a picture of anything. Your phone is receiving the page with the shopping cart. Your phone can then take the link and route it to your Moolah application automatically. So it is a faster purchase experience, and you don't have to worry about the shipping information because all that comes from your Moolah application as well.
Okay. Who are the early adopters that you have so far? The merchants, right?
So we've got merchants, and we've got consumers, and we've got financial institutions that we're working with right now. One question that we haven't had yet is talking about adoption, because on one level, what I'm trying to do is an absurd challenge, trying to disrupt an entire industry. But I've gotten some good feedback and good suggestions. Rather than trying to go after a whole industry or a whole market vertical at once, what I've been told to do is just focus on a small group and then build. So what I've developed is a 25-step adoption strategy. And in each of those 25 steps, I've got a very small community that I'm looking to develop and I'm looking to support. The community involves specific customers and specific merchants and then specific financial institutions, all of whom are going to benefit. My initial community was friends and family. My initial merchants were restaurants in the Passyunk area of Philadelphia. So that's very easy to come up with an application and a set of scenarios that deal with friends and family. As we take the next step in the 25-step marketing strategy, adoption strategy, I double the market size. And in different steps, I look to double the amount of consumers, double the merchants, and then double the influence from the banking institutions. If by going through a doubling process and by going through a series of manageable steps, I can get up to a consumer base of 130 million people in about 4 years. So I'm looking at taking steps in a very organized, very controlled rollout that will allow people to get value immediately and then valuably promoted the whole way through the system.
Okay. What's your price point for the merchants?
Merchants get to receive, the merchants get their service for free. Merchants have to have a Moolah account, but they're receiving value by getting all of the money that they work so hard to generate.
So how do you get paid?
So we get paid, as I mentioned, we've developed a financial service that's available by subscription to organizations, lending organizations and banks that have clients that benefit from a purchase platform. So lending organizations, as an example, our purchase fee is $15,000 a month for a sizable lending company to offer Moolah to their customer base. $15,000 a month is not all that much to a reasonably large financial company, but it gives us revenue that we can cover our costs and earn a fair profit. And that's what we're talking about doing.
So
go ahead.
Lending companies are not banks, right? They're two different entities, right?
Not all lending companies are banks, and not all banks are lending companies, but there's a lot of overlap there.
So lending companies are your paying customers.
Lending companies and banks are two examples of paying customers. Amazon is an example of a potential paying customer, as is Google, because they all have inventories of clients, consumers, and merchants who would benefit from the services. So those big companies could benefit by leasing the software and then offering it for internet capabilities.
So I'm gonna go back, right? So we're nearing close to our time. So the lending companies and the banking institutions are actually your customers because they're going to pay you.
They're the paying customers, but they're not the only customers, right?
Yeah, they're not the only customers, but they're the ones that you have to show the value to. Because
right, source of
if they don't, value, if they don't buy into the problem that Moolah is solving, then you have no incentive for the customer, and you have no incentive for the merchant.
And that's actually not entirely true.
Okay.
The merchants receive value immediately because they're getting to keep more of their revenue. Remember when I talked about the clients, I'm talking about Club Moolah, who clients are receiving as much as 3% back immediately. So if I were a consumer, and I am, and I had the option of paying with, as an example, a Chase Visa card that offered me 2% back, or make the same purchase with Moolah where I get a 3% discount immediately, most of the people that I talk to, as well as myself, will take the extra percent. Moolah provides more value to the consumer than Chase Visa.
So who gives that 3%? Moolah gives that 3%?
It comes from the system. Remember the Bloomberg study that I quoted earlier that showed $163 billion? 75% of that comes from cash advance fees, interest income, penalty fees, and annual fees. There's tons of money in the system. And by using clever accounting of that existing revenue, we can give all of the interchange fee back because it provides no value. And we can still earn a fair profit with the 75% of the revenue stream that exists. That's how Moolah gets paid, 75% of the remaining revenue.
Okay. Well, awesome. So that's our time, Andrew. This has been a great interview. So towards the end of the show, I circle back around, letting the audience and the interviewee know that what the item's about. It's about inclusion in technology and entrepreneurship. And so I have a question which is more geared towards, what do you think some of the strategies that the tech ecosystem can do to address the lack of diversity and inclusion?
So I guess the best way I can answer that is by, if I look at my experience in the financial industry, and I've worked for 30 years in both the government and in the financial industry. What I found is that many of the doors are closed to small entrepreneur and diverse organizations. They're not a part of the existing ecosystem, so they're left out. So the barrier of entry is too high. What we're trying to do with Moolah is turn things upside down and introduce a refreshing new model that allows communities to build by embracing and adopting the technology. So those people in the communities who are interested and looking how they can benefit from the availability of the technology that gives greater reward and allows the consumers and merchants to get more value, they're going to have a competitive advantage, and they're not going to have the same high barriers to entry into the banking industry that conventional banking systems have been throwing at them. So I see Moolah as a platform that if other entrepreneurs looking to help build internet capabilities, help to promote the adoption of the open banking protocols, they're going to be allowing more diversity and community building, and ultimately looking to build the economy faster than the existing banking segments.
Okay. All right. And the 3 takeaways from your experience from this show that you can share with the audience.
Well, I mentioned I worked for 30 years working in the U.S. Department of Defense and working in financial assistance to help them benefit from advanced technologies. One of the things I like about your community and working to develop communities with people is that as people understand, oh my goodness, this is lowering barriers and allowing me to keep more value, and it costs nothing. To see the looks on their faces is really reassuring, and helps us all to realize that when we band together and we do things to help the people that we're talking with, we're stronger as a group. That's my takeaway when I do community efforts and when I do conversations like the one we're having with the item, and I find it very exciting. So thank you for the chance for the interview.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is again Winston Bailey, your host from Going Up podcast, brought to you by The Item, a nonprofit organization that's focused on inclusion, technology, and entrepreneurship. And with us, we had a great opportunity to speak with Andrew, the owner of the Field System Integration and the developer of the app Moolah. Thank you. Take care.